I said it to my children actually, is do what you're good at and what you like doing. Try and find a Venn diagram where the two overlap. But in business, what I've decided really is that do things that you enjoy, not just about making money, because you might have to spend 10 years doing this on average. Do things you enjoy and do it with people you enjoy doing it with.
Hello and welcome to the Founded and Grounded podcast. I'm Laura Rawlings, hosting alongside Ollie Collard, business startup coach. Ollie, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I kind of battled the snow to get here this morning into the office. But it was a nice surprise waking up to it being white everywhere.
I know. Welcome to spring. You've just got used to a daffodil and here comes the snow and a mini blizzard. But it's only going to last a short time, isn't it? Can't get too excited.
Yeah, definitely bring on the spring.
Oh, yeah, I'm all about that. So today, our guest, wow, what a selection of things that they've been involved in. Honestly, if you look at their Instagram handles or their, little Twitter bio, it's pretty impressive, isn't it, by anyone's standards? So reveal who our guest is, Ollie.
Sure can, Laura. So I spoke to Piers Linney, who probably needs no introduction. I'm sure most people are aware of his background, but there were definitely some things when I was talking to him that I wasn't aware of in his early career and childhood, which were really interesting. So, really looking forward to our listeners hearing more about what Piers has been involved with.
Well, should we jump straight in there, actually, and rewind back to the young Piers and find out what he was up to?
So Piers, thank you so much for joining us on the Founded and Grounded show. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you for having me. I've managed to get some kit together. I borrowed my stepson's gaming mic, so I can give you some quality audio.
Fantastic. Well, shout out to your son for being so kind to make you come on the show and use his kit as well. I'm sure that's appreciated. So before we dive into your new business, Moblox, Piers, I wanted to find out a bit more about what got you to this point. So you're best known for obviously being a dragon on BBC's Dragon's Den. You started off as a solicitor, investment banker, and also featured on The Secret Millionaire. But what got you hooked into the world of business in the first place?
So I, as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in sort of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs. So I was, unlike most kids, one of my favourite subjects at school was history. And I grew up in the north of England in a mill town, right? So I became quite good at judo at my school. So quite an interesting background for where I started and where I ended up in the city and all that good stuff. But my history teacher, Mr. Beaumont, so he's no longer with us, but he used to tell us about the entrepreneurs, the mill owners, and the Industrial Revolution, because it literally started where I grew up in those valleys. And he used to point out the window at mills and weavers' cottages, why they had big windows, so they had daylight, so they could do their job. And I was fascinated by it. I was also fascinated by Carnegie and the sort of the US, slightly later obviously, and the sort of US great entrepreneurs, the Vanderbilts. And always fascinated me. So, but like any entrepreneur, often what gets you going is you want to make some money. So I wanted a shiny BMX worth 400 quid in 1986, which was quite a lot of money. And my mum and dad used to always, my mum and dad were working class and they became middle class, if you want to put people in boxes. And I wanted to buy this BMX. And they used to say to me, if you earn half of it, we'll pay the other half. To cut a very long story short, my first business was I disintermediated the local newsagent. So when I was doing paper rounds, £5 a week, 6 days a week, when it snowed, it covered your car in those days, literally when I grew up. And I thought, this is going to be a better way. And my dad one day said, can you get the paper on a Sunday because they didn't deliver? And I'll give you a tip. So I got his paper on my bike, came back, gave a tip, thought, there's a business there. My neighbour said, do the same thing. And I built this paper round. And I bought the papers from the wholesaler, not the newsagent, obviously, because there was no margin if I did that. And I made like 20 quid for one morning. So I learned quickly that, if you found a niche, an opportunity, you can add value to someone's life. And, the other bit, which is the bit that people often forget, is a lot of hard work. It was flipping hard work, delivering those papers and sorting out on a BMX. As I got older, I got a car, I did it in a car. But by that time, it wasn't cool to have a paper round. So that was my first exit. I sold it for 200 quid. And then after that, I was doing those kind of similar smelling perfumes at college, selling those, made a couple of grand, went to Barbados. So it was always kind of like a way of making someone to do something that I wanted to have. That's probably out of my financial reach. At law school, I was forming companies, doing company formations. As a trainee solicitor, I was doing film financing. And my friend, he went on to become the CEO of Lionsgate Films across the whole of Europe, which you've probably seen if you watch any films at all.
Wow.
And what else? And then when I was a banker at Credit Suisse, I was doing sort of what they call now side hustles. I think a side businesses, not hustles. Take them seriously, and that became my first sort of .com and reason why I left the city. So I was always, to answer your question, which I haven't quite done yet, and to answer your question, I've always kind of been in business. I've always been trying to make some money. I also, my first business actually that I started even before, after the paper round, which is kind of always there, was a candle, believe it or not. I used to sell candles by mail order. And this was, we had these sort of elaborate candles I used to light. They used to glow at night before you could buy them in Tesco. And now you can buy them anywhere. So that kind of market went through the door. But my mum, my role models have been my parents. Dad was a working class Mancunian lad. He went to Cambridge, but in those days you came back as well. You didn't get to join the club. And my mum was a nurse, very entrepreneurial, and she ran the local slimming club. And when she retired, she started a candles, hence the sort of similarity in the interest, candles and accessories business and flowers. And that turned into a 17-year-long wedding flower business. And my dad was a driver. So my mum was entrepreneurial, but when she was a young black woman in Barbados, she wanted to work in finance and you couldn't. You had to be white, literally a white Bayesian. So she became a nurse in the NHS. And it wasn't until she retired she could actually really become an entrepreneur and start her own business. So I think that's where it came from.
Amazing, Piers. Love to hear that, you wanted that BMX and you started a business to do that, and you obviously got the £200, the match funding that your parents were going to contribute to get you that BMX, and obviously that entrepreneurial gene and that interest and that curiosity stayed with you after that as well. So that's really great to hear.
And now, 40 years later, however long it is, I've got a mountain bike company. So I'm now making and selling bikes. So it just shows you, came full circle.
So you've gone full circle. Yeah, love it. So moving on to Moblox, I wanted if you could tell our listeners exactly what problem you're solving and how have you validated that problem?
Yeah, so I used to own and run the UK's largest B2B airtime providers and mobile phone contracts for businesses, basically. And this was the tail end of the kind of the mobile kind of land grab. Made some billionaires. I know one of them reasonably well, John Caldwell. And I kind of thought it was quite a not dirty, but old school business in a way. The way it was put together, I was always quite surprised, having come from the city, which is all very shiny and very professional. And I got out of that business, but we simplified it and we got out of it. Anyway, fast forward about 2 years ago, I was sort of in business, but not really. They weren't my businesses. I was been an investor really. And I was kind of plawing away. I was on the board of British Business Bank during COVID. So, all the COVID loans and bounced back. I went from 10 billion to 9, did all that stuff. I'm on the board of Sky. I've just joined another board of, I can't tell you yet, but a very large automobile manufacturer, an advisory board. And I was doing these things. I thought, yeah, you know what? I've made money along the way, but I wanted to find a market, as we all do. Large market, big opportunity, ripe for disruption. Hey, how easy can that be? And I was doing desktop research looking at this. And I came back to this telecoms market. I went to see a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and said, he's still in the market. I said, how do you make money? And he said, oh, well, people, they go out of contract, they go abroad, and basically they're still ripping people off. And I thought, I can't believe that's still how you make money these days. And the epiphany was the banks, the neobanks. So if you think of the neobanks, what have they done? They've taken existing infrastructure, banking infrastructure, BAC, SWIFT, all that good stuff. The telcos have, telco infrastructure, networks. They've then, you built a layer above that, use sort of APIs to sort of integrate into it, and then put a much more customer-centric, software-driven layer on top. Starling Business, Tide Bank, that's what they are. And they've disrupted, to some extent, the traditional banking market. And I thought, you can do that in telecoms, exactly the same way. But the telcos are probably even more behind than the banks due to process culture, inertia, systems, billing systems, the whole kit and caboodle. So I looked at that and I thought, right, I'm going to create the Starling, not quite Monzo, it's kind of consumer in a way. A lot of small businesses are prosumers, the tide of telco. I went to BTE, took me 12 months and did a deal with them. But the bigger issue is that, and you'll be aware of this, anyone listening to this, if you're an entrepreneur, is that small businesses are entrepreneurs, right? You're busy putting fires out. There's a huge amount of technology out there that you should be using to make yourself more efficient, to build your revenues and to reduce your costs and to make you more productive. That's the key word. And UK businesses are not as productive as they should be because they're not embracing tech. And why is that? Because you don't understand it. When I ask people, why did you buy that application? I asked my accountant or my mate had it, which is not always the best way you can make the purchasing decision. So the idea behind Moblox really is that we're kind of providing one-to-many content, because you can't do that one-to-one. I'm going to build you a rack and sell you hardware, software, and support contract anymore. The cloud and software as a service has killed that. We do one-to-many content to small business owners and entrepreneurs, founders, probably sub 10 employees is our target. It's the mass. And through that content, you can make better purchasing decisions about technology and business tools. A business tool might be access to legal precedents, right? It's not software. And then you buy that from us or through us. Either when it's from us, in some cases, the market's so broken, the services are so bad, we are reimagining them ourselves. So the first one I built, which nearly has made me start going grey, which is why I'm wearing a baseball cap, is mobile. So mobile is so old school. People are being unlimited contracts you don't need. The average SME user these days in the UK uses 6 gig of data. You're being ripped off hundreds and hundreds of pounds a year. They're not built for small businesses. You get consumer service. You get charged more to have a business contract. They tie into 12, 24-month contracts. Who needs that these days? Flexibility, or inflexibility is what kills small businesses and startups. You want maximum flexibility. So I've actually built, believe it or not, Moblox Mobile. It's a mobile phone network for small businesses and entrepreneurs. The app's very different. The content's in there. And we're going to be adding more services quite soon, probably by the time this goes out even. So HR support, legal support, IT help desk, accounting support, e-learning, you name it. And eventually we're going to add more tech services. So broadband, basic kind of cloud-based call services. So the things we're building are more kind of telco focus. We're going to resell core services, so broadband, Microsoft 365, that's Slack, Google, that kind of stuff. And then the big one's the marketplace. So the marketplace is, we might talk about 10, we might have a chat like this about if you're an expert in accounting software, 10 different types. And based on your budget, ambition, scale, growth, all that good stuff, number of employees, you choose one and you buy it from us. And then, the provider gives us some kind of kickback for that customer acquisition. So there's 3 levels of service. But we've started with Moblox Mobile because that's been the most complicated integrating into a network. And we're the first B2B mobile provider in the UK. So that's Moblox in a nutshell. And the idea is what I really want to build at the end of the day, think about it, is what is it? It's a community of small business and entrepreneurs. And what that aggregates then is buying power. So I can then go into the market with X 10,000, 100,000, 150,000 or more small business owners and entrepreneurs and say to brands, right, give us a deal on laptops, give us a deal on X, Y, and Z. And it becomes what Groupon should have been. And the last thing is that we're also moving into leasing. So we're going to look at leasing devices from phones to laptops to even white vans, because there's another market there full of intermediaries that act like used car salesmen that I want to disintermediate.
Wow, Piers, a lot to unpack there. I mean, obviously starting with the telecom industry and being the first to market and disrupting that, but it sounds like a whole range of services which fundamentally is going to make it easier for small business owners, founders to access technology and actually implement that in their own business life.
Yeah, so eventually the idea is this is our kind of strap line for the future, run your business on Moblox. So essentially, you can come to Moblox, get objective advice. If our services aren't for you, we won't sell them to you. And if they're not good enough, we'll make them good enough. But objective advice about what you should be using to maximize the potential of your business and minimize the time you spend on faffing around with things you shouldn't, admin. So it makes you grow your revenues, reduce your costs, and that bit in the middle is profit, income, dividends. Profit. It's what puts food on the table, or it's what allows you to go and get your next round of finance, basically, as you've proven something. That's what Moblox wants to go. I want to create the first real SME, and I include startups in that, brand. Because if I asked you, is there one in the UK? There isn't. And what my profile does is lend itself to that, because you know what it's like. Building a business is lonely. It's hard work. Often your family and friends haven't got a clue what you're doing. They don't understand why you're doing it. So we're trying to build a community as well. And that's something that, if you look at the neobanks, they try and do that. You're not going to build a community around your bank account. But you can build a community around your ambition, your dreams, your lifestyle, and this business that you want to build. And that's what I want to do. And I've been doing this for free almost for like nearly nearly a decade. I even created a business course, which you can get free if you join Moblox, we can talk about. But I've been doing it for free. So it's a way really of bringing everything I know, everything I've done, everything I'm interested in, rolling it together into a business so that I can get out of bed and do it. And because I've been on TV and I've been a dragon, everyone thinks, everything's easy, you can snap your fingers and money appears, you've got all the cash. That's not the case. This has been a real grind, actually. Building it, raising money, it's been more expensive, taken longer, been more complicated, all the things that founders face. The only difference is I've been there before, so I can kind of I kind of know how to deal with it and kind of can maybe brush myself down and crack on, whereas a lot of people struggle.
100%, and we'll come back to some of the challenges that you faced along the way in part 2 of the podcast, Piers. But just picking up on something you said there about building that community, which is an integral part of Moblox. I often think the word community gets bandied about and often confused with like an audience. So what does community mean to you?
So good question, right? So I asked myself that question, and what I've learned along the way, and if you're listening to this, is reach out to people that know more about stuff than you do. The danger as an entrepreneur, and I've been there myself, is that you think you know everything and you just don't. So when I started thinking about a community, I was reading some of the research put out by Andreessen Horowitz about social plus, social first, community first. And the brands of the future are built around communities, or you look at the influencers, the sort of people on YouTube churning out brands left, right, and centre. Well, that's a community in a way, a bit of a loose one. Now, a lot of the large corporates use communities as a way of reducing, essentially, their support overhead, because that's where. And one of the guys who really helped me was the guy that started the Gift Gaff. He was one of the guys that created the Gift Gaff community. He then went into Telefonica and created communities around Telefonica from the expertise that he gained. And he span it out of Telefonica. It's called Standing on Giants. And they basically build communities for large brands, Airbnb, Lenovo. So we worked with them, did a workshop, and they've even actually mentored my community manager, Sophia. And we built this community around, a true community about, people coming together, sharing insights, sharing their successes, sharing their failures, and actually creating value. Not somewhere that we're going to be knocking on the door of every day trying to sell something. And we always say that you're probably going to come to Moblox for the content and the services, but you're probably going to stay because they're good, obviously, but also because of the community and you get access to me as well, to some extent. So that's what our community is about. It's a real community. Now, we started writing community software and we thought, this is a waste of time. We're always going to be focused on revenue-based code. So we're probably going to integrate now. We've been doing some work on integrating all singing and dancing community API-driven sort of part of our website that we'll probably, or maybe the app. We're kind of working out how to do that. So one of the key things about building any business is, you got to, which battles do you choose to win or lose to win the war? And I would love to build my own community software and have it all fully integrated. But if I can find someone that's API driven, we can get the authentication right. We can deploy. We use Segment, which is records every single activity and action happens across your applications and your platform. If we can do that, that's good enough for us. Let's crack on. So the community is really important. Ours is quite nascent, but we're going to come back to that. But I think that is the key to brand. One is about content marketing and building a community around your service.
I love that, Piers. And moving on slightly, just to come back to something you mentioned earlier in the conversation about your role as non-exec director of the British Business Bank. They do lots of fantastic work, and I've got first-hand experience of this. Being advisor with Virgin Startup and Biz Britain is on the Startup Loan Scheme. And just wanted to ask, for maybe listeners not aware of the Startup Loan Scheme, what does it provide and what are the benefits in regards to applying for a startup loan?
So Startup Loans was separate. It was then rolled into British Business Bank, and that is, if you haven't heard of that, that's the UK development bank. So during COVID, that's where the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme came from, bounce back loans, and the kind of convertible loan scheme for tech companies. And post Brexit, that's where a lot of the cash is going to come from that the European funds used to provide. Now, startup loans, going back to that, which I forgot you were Virgin Startup actually. That's one of the big delivery partners. So British Business Bank is not a bank you can knock on the door of and they give you a loan. It's done through delivery partners, from the high street banks to venture capital funds, to debt funds, to startup loans. And I can't remember the numbers now because it's been a while, but startup loans is hundreds of millions have been provided to young businesses. And the average loan there, what's interesting, is about £7,000. And it's a personal loan. It's not to the company or the business. It's to individuals. Up to 4 of you can apply. And I think it's up to, last time I looked, £25,000. So you could technically raise 100k. There were 6 brothers I once met who started a gin company. I think they all got the maximum. So they were probably the outlier. And it's huge, because what it means is that even if you've got a slightly checkered, not completely checkered, but if you've got a slightly checkered or troubled credit history, they can work around that. You'll know this, Ollie. You get a mentor, probably what you are, isn't it? You get a mentor to help you get through the process, to help you, maybe construct a business plan, understand the financials, and get the business going. And I've met so many entrepreneurs along the way, just randomly in different places, and say, well, how did you get started? Is that startup loans? So if, and building a business often is about having that initial capital. And if you're lucky, you were born in the right postcode with the right parents, they can write that check for you. Thank you very much. Or if you had a job where you save some money, you can do that. Not everybody's in that fortunate position. And this is a way of accessing capital that £7 on average to £25,000 or more, if there's more of you, they can really help you go from not being able to start a business to starting one, because these days a lot of businesses involve technology, and not a lot of these companies, they're restaurants, they don't need technology, but a lot of them, most businesses, there's a period of time where you're investing before you can generate revenue, and that's what helps you overcome. And have I got that right, Ollie? Because you're probably even more experienced than I am.
100% Piers, nail on the head there. So thank you for talking that in a bit more detail for our listeners. Moving on slightly, but on the same note, so talking about people who maybe aren't as fortunate as others with parents that can fund their businesses, and maybe talking a bit about young people who've maybe got in a bit of trouble with the law, because I know you do a bit of mentoring around young people in prisons. I was actually, on Monday, I was at an institution called Vinnie Green, which is a secure children's unit, delivering a course called Learn the Legal Hustle for a company called Street to Boardroom, and it's all about helping young people use the skills that they developed on the road and actually apply them to running a legal business. So my question to you, Piers, is how can we support more young people to start legal businesses rather than going into a life of crime?
Well, that's a jump. One end of the spectrum to the other. I wonder where you're going with that. So I was a Secret Millionaire in 2011 on Channel 4, and I spent my time, at least what they recorded. There was other stuff that I did, but what they recorded and put on TV was I was in the prison. So I learned quite a lot about the kind of the psyche actually, and a lot of the young lads that were in prison. And this was they were all lads in this prison. There was young offenders actually, and one of the lads I got to know very well on the programme and wanted to sort of help. The producer didn't want me to write him a cheque, clearly. Anyway, he got out, I mentored him, didn't mollycoddle him, he did his own thing. He was an entrepreneur for a while. I gave him a job, I made him redundant. That was quite an awkward day. And he now is earning more money than I do as a cloud infrastructure engineer with a family. So that just shows you one slight point, is that extra little nudge, that bit of social capital I provided him, networks, access, support, someone to talk to, it's like a bullet, isn't it? When it's millimetre off here, 2,000 metres down range, you're not going to hit a house. Whereas if you just change someone's trajectory slightly, you can completely change their lives. So one of the issues is, I was a lawyer as well. So I'm not entirely sure whether a lot of people in prison are going to do jumping into legal careers, because it can be quite difficult, clearly, because one of the issues about having a criminal record is that a lot of the world in which we live tends to restrict what you can do, and that is not a good thing. Look at Daniel, is his name. He's a great example of someone that was very talented. And if you hadn't met me, his entrepreneurial skills, because he does have them, who knows, might have been used in different ways. And a lot of these kids in there are very talented, they're very entrepreneurial, but a lot of them just can't read. I mean, it's as bad as that, They literally can't read. And because you can't read, you can't fill out a form, you can't apply for anything, and you go in this vicious circle. So I think things are getting better. People are beginning to understand that your history doesn't necessarily predict your future. So even the professions now are being more open to allowing people to apply or go through the process, whereas in the past they wouldn't have done. And what it actually gives you often is when you're on that side. I met people that have gone into kind of KICs and community interest companies and charities, legal based, to help people have been in trouble with the law or kind of sort of stuck in the criminal justice system, and they have an insight that the people that grew up in the right postcode don't, and that's the difference. And that's where diversity, and that's one of my things I'm very passionate about. I'm on the diversity and inclusion board at Sky. Diversity in all of its forms is really important throughout the whole of society. And one of my quote is, what I'll put on my wall is, when my partner asked me for a quote, is ambition, right, is evenly distributed. Right? Access to capital, networks and opportunity isn't. And whether it's law or whether it's technology or whether it's running a bakery, I don't care. Until we connect the ambition with the opportunity without friction, we're not wringing as much out of our economy, our society, as we can.
A word about our sponsors. As a founder, cybersecurity isn't top of your priorities. Yet Alliance has identified cyber threats as one of the top 3 risks facing business globally. This is where NovaBlue comes in. Its founder, Steve Mason, was technical director with GCHQ. He was in charge of keeping the nation safe from cyber threats. He set up NovaBlue to help keep businesses safe. NovaBlue are offering Founded and Grounded listeners a free cybersecurity health check. Simply go to nova-blue.co.uk/podcast offer. There is so much in that, Ollie. I mean, what an interesting career, right from the early days of paper rounds and perfumes. Goodness me, from the legal side to understanding, all the money side of things, being a banker, his parents. Wow, what a package of skills and experience.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting where it all started about wanting this shiny BMX and finding a way to actually get some money that his parents would then match fund to buy that bike for him, and actually being really entrepreneurial at an early age. And I think that's quite clear in a lots of entrepreneurs is that they've actually fostered that entrepreneurship from a young age.
Yeah, and it doesn't change when you get older, as you'll hear later on. He's still earning money so that he can get himself nice mountain bikes. It does make me think as a parent, it's one of those where like, oh, right, okay, how am I going to try and encourage these sorts of skills in my little one? We've both got small children who will soon want pocket money. It's like, okay, we want them to sort of need to strive for this a bit. But yeah, plenty to think about in that.
Yeah, I always look back to my childhood, and I always did like car washing one of my mates, and I kind of selling old toys on the road outside on a mini stool and things like that. So I'll probably try and pass that on to both of my children.
Bless. I've got a vision of you with a little cardboard sign. We were the same, but lived in the middle of nowhere, so no one came, which actually is a very good lesson. You need to be where your potential buyers are, or nothing's going to happen. Let's move on then and start to delve into what Piers has got to share when it comes to some of his favourite failures and some of the challenges along the way.
What cracks me up is, sometimes it makes me want to cry, is I sit on these podcasts and I've got a business course and you're supposed to be a dragon, you've been on TV, got all the flipping answers, what could go wrong? And I sit there and I think, I've just done what I tell people not to do. and it's so frustrating because, in starting a business, building a business, it's the Donald Rumsfeld analogy, isn't it? It's the known knowns, they're easy, you deal with them, right? It's the known unknowns, that's about research and, reaching out and finding out what you need to know and working hard to know it. But what makes you an entrepreneur are the unknown unknowns, the things that you don't even know you didn't know, and they're going to come and bite you in the backside. And, from contracts to recruitment to infrastructure design to UX to fundraising, I've made little mistakes and all of them along the way. Some big mistakes, but if you have more experience, you can kind of see it coming and correct it. I think one of the things is staying. Because I focus on the sort of the marketing, the outreach, the funding, is staying very much involved in the design and the UX and that customer experience, because and that user and the user journeys, because the end of the day, it's kind of my vision, and I understand it the best. So I've got more involved in that more recently. I was getting a bit too detached from it and letting other people do it. Well, I got more involved into the actual detail, saying, no, that's not how I think this is going to work. And what I've learned the hard way is, and again, I'll say it again, entrepreneurs sometimes think you know everything, is to listen. Listen to people you don't expect to listen to. A lot of people, they know you, and they know how you think and tick. When you tell them what you're doing or how you're doing it, and they say, well, I wouldn't do it like that, you might think, well, what the hell does my mum know? But they know you. So listen to people. Get out of your garden shed in your lab coat and listen to the world. Talk to your target customer. We did a lot of research, primary research. One thing I did, and I did try my business course, right, which you can get free, sign up to Moblox, is I actually tried to go through the initial process. So I did, thank goodness, do a huge amount of research, because I thought I'm going to commit the next 5 to 10, 7 years of my life to this, right? No guarantees any business is going to work. I don't care who you are. And I know very, very successful entrepreneurs that have started a business, thought, okay, I can do an adjacent business quite similar over here, and therefore after 2 years, no, it didn't work, and just canned it. And I thought I need to do the research. So I literally, when I'm talking to investors, I'm out pitching to investors now. I spend a lot of time doing that. And when they get interested, some more context and information, I can roll out my 70-page research document, which goes through the background. Now, what's interesting is fascinating, is looking at that. I wrote this like during COVID, actually. I'm looking where we are today. And it's kind of 80% there, but it's moved on. And it's moved on and evolved. Some of it wasn't quite right, because I talked to people. And most of my investors, people involved, people I didn't know previously, because they have a different skill set and a different interest and expertise, which is what I needed. So to answer your question, almost everything I haven't got completely right, because you never do. But the key thing, and the thing that I really enjoy, is working with and building a team. And that can be really hard, especially now if you're trying to hire developers. It's a flipping revolving door. But now it's taken a bit of a spinning door, but I've got a great team. And it's a team I want to sort of help become successful with me and the business.
Amazing answer, and really refreshing to hear, Piers, that you don't have all the answers, right? As a seasoned entrepreneur, that the unknowns are the unknowns, as you say, and it's how you react and how you call upon other people, and listen, as you say, is a fundamental skill that you need to employ to be able to learn. And so my next question is, who do you call when things aren't going to plan then?
That's one of my issues, is I don't really have... People always think I've had some mentor that some billionaire put me under their wing years ago, and I've never had that, actually. My role model was not quite mentors, my mum and dad. Now, I've had people along the way that I've learned from. So I've always enjoyed working with people that are better at doing what I'm doing than I am. Usually my boss, and that's what I've learned from. So now I've kind of built a team of people that are more expert than I am, which is clearly what you want. And I have a lot of investors, and my investors actually, who are experts in different parts of the business. None of them, though, have the overview of the kind of vision, something we were trying to create. But if I have an issue, I will try and reach out to people for at least a second opinion. But often you don't have that luxury, and you have to use the data that you've got, the information you've got, the context you can gather, and make a decision. And the key is to make decisions. It's not just to keep, get stuck in some loop. Any decision, I know this is an old adage, any decision almost, not quite any, but any considered decision is better than no decision or indecision. And you have to soldier on. And, a good day in business or building a business is, you might make 5 steps forward, hooray, but you're going to go 3 backwards the next day. And some days you'll go 6 backwards. But overall, over time, you're making progress. And eventually, this is why, you call them seasoned or serial entrepreneurs. You've just seen mistakes or similar mistakes before, so you can kind of see them coming, and you're able to sort of, turn hopefully it's not an oil tanker, but, turn the ship before you hit the rocks. But it's I tell you what, the great thing is it's actually exciting. Because if it wasn't, it's fascinating, it's exciting, it's what I love. And I keep saying to myself, stop starting companies. because I'm getting too old for it now. Some of them are. I'll never see them launch one day. But it's what fascinates me is the process about a business and finding the customers and the marketing. And that's the key to it is learning. So what I am learning a lot about and reaching out about now is the marketing side of things. I'm no expert in digital marketing, right? A lot of my marketing I've done is been in a B2B sales. It's people in Audi selling stuff. I've done digital marketing, through companies I've been involved in, but never in a business myself. People often call me a tech entrepreneur. Well, a lot of my tech has been enterprise integration. I've invested in tech companies, but I've never really built a real software-driven company that an app very focused on an app. Basically, I've never really done that myself. So there's a lot for me to learn. But I have the history, the experience from lots of different places, kind of to bring together. But even then, I will always try and reach out to someone that knows more than I do.
Love that, Piers. And just to pick up on something you said about business is all about decision making, and sometimes, particularly if you're a first-time entrepreneur, it's about actually just making a decision. And I can't remember who said it, but sometimes just getting to, feeling about you're 50% sure, then making that decision is more important rather than getting to that 100% point where you have absolute crystal clarity. So have you got any advice for how you can encourage founders to make better decisions?
Oh, wow. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? So my natural state, if you watch me or, you probably met me now, is shoot from the hip. I'm quite gut. I'll come back to gut, actually. There's an interesting point on that. But I've been trained. I'm a lawyer, ex-investment banker in the city, to go into minute detail if I have to. So yes, you can shoot from the hip, be the and you might be that extrovert salesperson that just cannot do detail. You just can't. So you've got to find someone that can, otherwise you're gonna have a problem. But you have to be able to, eventually is get into the detail. The other thing about gut is that often you can make decisions using what they call a gut reaction. Now, thing about that is that I can't make a gut reaction decision about which engine to put onto a rocket to fly to Mars because I have no experience of it. It may as well get my cat to do it, put its paw on a choice. Having said that, if it's about software, technology, how to put an agreement together with somebody, a partnership, because I'm an ex-lawyer, I've been an entrepreneur for many years, I understand a lot of that. So in a way, your gut is often just your subconscious assimilating all that data and helping you make a decision. So sometimes if you've got the experience, gut reaction is not a bad thing. If you haven't got the experience, you've probably just got stomachache. So be very careful about that. So to answer your question though is, what you making decisions about data, isn't it? It's about putting together as much data and context as you possibly can. If you can reach out to people, great. If you can't, you can't. Don't worry about it. And then using that data you have to look at the situation and then try and make a decision. And if it's contractual, you can then try and reflect and sort of reduce the risk by how you structure that agreement or that contract, because there are ways in which you can do it which share the risk. So if you're not sure, you might not get a better deal. You might have to pay, you might get less margin, or you might have to pay more depending on which side of the fence you're on, because in the contract you built in more risk aversion in a way. So think about it that way. Think about, right, I think I understand it, I'm willing to make a decision, but can I augment that decision? Can I augment the risk in contract or in the agreement? And that's what law is, really. That's what a commercial agreement is. That's what warranties do when you sell a company or an investor invests. They assume you've told them the truth, but in case you haven't, or in case you don't know you have, or in case you don't know you haven't even, they have a warranty, they have a disclosure letter. And if you haven't, or even if you didn't know you haven't, they can claim against you to adjust the valuation or the price they pay for your business. That's what warranties are. It's an adjustment mechanism. So you can always adjust it in the contract, but at some point, use the data you've got to make a decision. Don't just spin around in circles, because you just don't get on. And often as a founder, you're going to think that all they ever do is put out fires. Well, yeah, that's what it feels like, because they're decisions, essentially, that you have to make.
Right, Ollie, I think there are two things in here that I want us to kind of pull out and have a chat about. And the first one is what he said about making decisions, about getting better and faster at making decisions, because that is something that really is at the heart of it, isn't it? And as the founder, as the person who sets it up, or if you're there, with someone else, that's so much of what you're having to do is to get on and make decisions. And that's not everyone's forte at the start.
No, it's not easy. And I think particularly if you've worked in the corporate world for a while and you're used to like having official channels and people that you have to consult with and teams of people doing specific jobs, then you might not make decisions on a daily basis. And I think actually getting into the practice of decision making, it does take time, but you do get better at it over time. You get faster, you get quicker, you get more confident. And I think the key point that I've really learned is that you don't have to be 100% on something. If you just get to 50%, it saves all the worrying and toing and froing in your mind about what the best decision is going to be. And actually, you can move on and use your brain power elsewhere. So be confident with making decisions quicker is probably my takeaway from that.
It is something that I feel I am learning. I do find that quite hard. I'm naturally, if you're one of those people who's used to doing loads of research and you have to check loads of recommendations first, you will find this much harder. Or if you've invested a lot in it, maybe it's a family business, or maybe you've put in a lot of money, and there are some big decisions where things really do change and it might feel like there's no going back from. So although it sounds easy to say, it's not. I know I have a lot of empathy actually, because I know it isn't actually easy to do. But what you were saying about your brain power, it's so true. And this is something I think about a lot, as well as trying to make quicker decisions. It's partly about closing the loop on something. So if you imagine having loads of tabs open on your computer, which I am guilty of, then you need to learn to close them so that you can think about something else. So it's like finish the task and then you can not think about it anymore. Otherwise, your poor little brain is having to keep working on stuff all the time. Or in my case, my poor little brain is having to keep going over stuff all the time. And yes, ultimately a step has to be taken to move forward in one way or another. So maybe it is about breaking it down into the smallest next step rather than the big thing. But honestly, I just think that is such good advice. And also just that appreciation that being a founder is about putting the fires out. You are on the front line of it. You are the one who has to decide. I think that's the reality, and you just might not have realised that necessarily when you start up a business and you think, well, I want to help people, or I want to make this product, or, actually you've got a series of decisions that you have to make, especially at the start, and you're getting stuff up and running, and you'll continue to have to do that as well. So get comfy.
Yeah, I love that analogy about the tabs open, Laura. And I think if you're sitting on the fence with a decision, then it means that you, like you say, you can't move on to the next thing. And because you've got to make so many decisions on a daily basis, you simply have to go with it. And, no decision is ultimately final. I think if you want to pivot or change or reflect and you realise that it's a mistake, then you can do that. And, so I think actually going with the confidence that you're going with your gut feeling and the initial decision you make, that will enable you to become a better founder and make better decisions for your business.
Yeah, I know, Piers, his helpful advice here is around getting into the detail about, putting all that data and information together in order to make some of those decisions. But in the past, when I found it really hard to make decisions, I remember signing up to a business course and having loads of business ideas and just not knowing which one to go with and thinking, this is such a big investment, I have to make it right. I can't, I've spent the money, I'm going to put significant time in. And then I just had to say, look, if you think all of these are equally good, then you're just going to pick one, and then you can either rule it out 9 months down the line. But at the moment, you risk sitting there trying to think about which one is going to be the right one for 9 months and not actually moving any forward. So I just gave myself permission to just try for one. And if it didn't work after a fixed amount of time, then just let that go. Yeah.
And I think it's such an important point is about actually seeing what the market decides, because ultimately the market is the most powerful decision maker for you. So if it's not going to float or have legs, then you're going to get that feedback pretty much within the first couple of weeks and months. So rather than agonizing over these decisions in your head, ultimately it's pointless because the market's going to tell you. So you just need to get to that decision quicker.
Yeah, you're so right on this, Ollie. Actually, I do take on board what you're saying, definitely, as well as the guests that we speak to. Let's move along and hear our final section from Piers, shall we? So this is where he's looking ahead, thinking about what he wants, or I know he's not thinking about it. He's got a very particular set plan of what he wants to happen over the coming years with Moblox.
So Moblox, as I was saying, is that we've spent a lot of time building the platform. So we've abstracted our front end from the we've got a telco integration, so we can pick up the front end and move it overseas if we wanted to. So a lot of it's been in the design. We've built the platform. We've then done a telco integration, which is very, very complicated. Imagine the billing of data and minutes and overseas calls, and it's very complicated. So we've kind of built that. So now we've got the basics, and now it's a question of, right, what do we build on top? So every other service we add is more API driven in terms of how we integrate it. It's more than about the UX, the user experience. So then we're adding services to build revenue, and ideally services that our customers want. So we're going to talk to them about what they actually want and how they want them to be deployed. And then it's about in any recurring revenue business. So in recurring revenue business, if your churn is 5% and you reduce it to 2.5%, your business will be twice as big in terms of revenue in 5 years. That's the maths. So then it gets into retention. So in terms of, are the services good enough? Is the community active? Are people feel as though they're part of something? Do we offer them value to our membership through getting deals off brands? Because we're now building a base, we've got some buying power. So all of that. And then it's rolling out services. And hopefully then, the idea eventually is the marketplace, is that you don't just click a link and we get an affiliate commission. Is that you actually provision the services on the Moblox platform. Now I say that today, nobody might ever want that, who knows? But that's the vision, is that you actually run your business on Moblox within 5 years. And I think that if you can build this community, this base of founders and small businesses with real traction, they're really engaged, and we're providing services that really add value. They're better. Basically, they're better, they're simpler, they're cheaper, and they're more flexible. They're the key things. That's a business of real value. And then we get into partnerships. What I want to do then is for people to be able to, sell it to their friends and family. If you think about it, right, Ollie, if you're a founder or a small business owner, I want to build a relationship with you. I want you to trust Moblox, love what we do, join the community, get involved. Then I want to sell services to your network, your employees, your family, your spouse, your kids. You're like a node to the adult population with this kind of links. That's the Moblox model. It's B2B. It's B to prosumer. 75% of the UK's 6 million small businesses are one person, but it's also B2B2C as well. So that's the model I want to roll out. But I want to create within 5 years, the SME small business entrepreneur brand in the UK. That is my goal, and that's through content. I want to build an industrialized machine of generating content. So I want Moblox to become almost like a small business entrepreneurship content publisher. So videos, written content. Our content gets great traction, great dwell time. People read lots of it. They stay on the site quite a long time. I do lives, but my following is okay, but it could be a lot bigger.
Okay, it's got to be better than okay, Piers, surely.
No, anyway, I've got about 100,000, but people have millions, don't they? But for me, it's not really about the quantity; it's the quality, isn't it?
Quality, yeah, 100%, and that engagement, isn't it, in terms of facilitating those conversations between the community and building that affiliate model that you're referring to there. Love that. There's now an opportunity. Sorry, did you want to add anything there, Piers?
No, I was going to say that. So, the last thing I'd say is that ideally, yes, you can link up your friends and family and enjoy it, but ideally, I want people to be able to literally build a business on Moblox. So you can resell our services to your network. If you think about all those people on Instagram that have got 10,000 entrepreneur followers, they've got no way of monetizing it. They make some rubbish course. Whereas now they can monetize it by introducing Moblox services to their own community, their own following, and monetize it.
Love that. There's now an opportunity for you to ask our listeners a question, Piers. It tends to work best in a kind of poll style question. So is there anything that you'd like an answer to in terms of the development of Moblox? Maybe it might be about future services you're developing.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. So if you're this is startup and founders, isn't it, really, not just small business owners?
Yep.
As a a startup person starting a business or a founder, what are the core services that you think you need, but you struggle to understand and implement? What are the top three?
Okay. Are you able just to give sort of 3 to 4 options there, Piers, just to make it easy to engage?
Yeah, so it might be, is it communications? Is it CRM? Is it customer relationship management software? So is it to help you sell? Or is it, communications, what is CRM? What's another good one? Another good one would be sort of a project management, planning. What are the tools that these are the things I think most businesses need, but often there's a lot of these things out there now, software as a service, cloud. Which is the one that you struggle with the most?
Great stuff, Piers. We'll get some answers to you on that one as well. One of the key parts of the Founded and Grounded show is asking our featured founders just for distilling down just one piece of advice that you'd pass on to somebody who is an early stage founder or somebody thinking of starting a business. So what would your one piece of advice be, Piers?
It might turn out to be a few pieces, but I'll roll it into one. So one is do it anyway. I think there's a business in everybody. I think everyone's going to be in business in a generation. The kind of a 0-hour contract is the thin and the very fat wedge. That's the way the world's going. Companies don't want employees. They want people that provide services to them, and that's a business. So that's number one, is do it. Whether it's a side hustle, if that's what you want to call it, or you actually drop everything and start a business, do it. And the other thing to realise is that even though you think that your new business is the one that's going to help you buy an island, right, and you put everything into it, be aware that in most cases, that's not the case. In most cases, it's not the first business that is the one that makes you. You can. I was away with John Caldwell for his 70th birthday, which is a whole other thing. Go and look at my social media if you want to laugh. When you want to see me in leather and lace on a toga, go and look at my Instagram. And I read his book. It's about the making of a billionaire. I love paying him money. So go and get it if you haven't yet. All the proceeds go to Caldwell Children. And his background is, he started selling Belstaff jackets in Stoke, which I never knew that's where Belstaff started, because I'm from Stoke as well. Then he was selling used cars. He was a used car salesman for like a decade almost, him and his brother. And then he started selling mobile phones because he couldn't make a phone call from the car auction, and the car dealers needed a way of communicating back to the office or to call their customers who wanted a certain type of car. And the rest is, as I say, is history. So, mobile phones wasn't John's first business, and most entrepreneurs that's not the case. So there comes a point, this is the piece of advice, there comes a point even in your first business where you think, hang on a minute, I've got a better idea, or I've seen a different niche along the way, or this isn't working out, is don't hang on to it for dear life. I always say, I've learned as an entrepreneur, and I suffer from this as well, is you chase rabbits down holes and you go too deep before you can't get back out. Sometimes fill it in and move on.
Love that advice, and I think, like you say, it's the entrepreneurial journey of where it leads you next. And I think the average age of a successful founder is about 45, isn't it? So it's not going to.
I know. Thank God, I'm 51, so I'm just on the wrong. Yeah, so I'm 51, so I'm just on the wrong side of that bell curve, but not too far.
Not too far, and you've had lots of past successes, Piers, so we can definitely count you on that one. Lastly, where can people find out a bit more about Moblox?
So you can go to moblox.com, Moblox, moblox.com. If you join, you get access to the content, but you also get access to my course for free. And my course is, so I'm at my course, right? People often ask me for business advice all the time, toilets, restaurants, trains, when I'm asleep. They leave notes in front of me, believe it or not. And I thought I'm going to make a few videos because I get asked the same questions all the time. I'll make a few videos to answer some of these basic questions. I'm mainly retentive. So I ended up doing 76 lessons, 10.5 hours. I made a course. I can't base myself on the internet flogging a course. So I kind of rolled it into Moblox. So it is 200 quid. I've sold it for 500 to quite a few people. It's 200 quid normally, but if you sign up to Moblox, you get it for free. You get our content, and go to moblox.com/mobile and move to Moblox Mobile. You want to support small business, entrepreneurs, you want a better mobile service, you want to be part of the Moblox community, sign up. If you've got a SIM-only contract, sign up today. If you're in some stupid contract you've been locked into, when you get out of it, diarise and don't sign another one and move to us.
Amazing, Piers, and I'm sure there's going to be so much value in that course that you've curated and obviously giving away for free, which is incredibly kind.
It nearly killed me making that course, Ollie. So the most value people can get out of it makes me sleep better at night.
Go sign up then, people. Lastly, Piers, if I knew you better, what's one question that I would have asked you?
So one of the ones I get asked a lot is, about bikes. You know, asked about Atherton bikes. That's an obvious one. Another one is work-life balance. But an interesting one is, it's funny how the world takes you, but life takes you on journeys. But I'm into mountain bikes. Although I haven't been on one for about a year, to be honest with you. So I need to get back on one. And I got a DM from G Atherton, which is like getting a DM from sort of, Lewis Hamilton if you're into cars. Saying, I want to start a bike company. Can we have a chat? Anyway, fast forward, God, it must be 4 years now. We crowdfunded it, built a business, 3D printed titanium and carbon fibre mountain bikes. And now we're at full capacity. So that's interesting how just your hobbies. And what I found, another piece of advice is, I said it to my children actually, is do what you're good at and what you like doing. Try and find a Venn diagram where the two overlap. But in business, what I've decided really is that do things that you enjoy, not just about making money, because you might have to spend 10 years doing this on average. Do things you enjoy and do it with people you enjoy doing it with. That could be applied to other things, but I'm talking about business.
Love that, Piers. And yeah, well, thank you very much for all of your insights and wisdom that you've shared on Founding and Grounded. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Shall we start, Ollie, picking up off of that? Shall we start by trying to answer what Piers has put out as the question to our listener? I know we'll return to the social side in just a tick, but he said about, as a startup, what are the core services that you need but struggle to understand? I think this is really good. And if I just think about what I've asked for, it's often when it comes to legal stuff, things that I don't have a clue about. If someone says, can you send us your terms of whatever it might be, terms of engagement, let's call it that, terms and conditions. Well, I've got some now for one part of my business, but I don't actually have it for another. I don't have them when I host events, for instance. And and a friend asked me, they said, have you got a copy I could borrow? And I was like, well, actually, no, I don't. I've always worked with people that I kind of know. And then I thought, well, actually, I don't always know all of them that well. And I thought maybe as I have that for my hypnotherapy clients, I should do the same. So, yeah, for me, it's very much the legal side of things. As soon as it comes to anything legal, that could be copyright as well, that kind of thing. I mean, not that I've got anything that I'm about to do, but in the past, that's certainly something where I've thought, I don't know enough about this. And it's more than that. There will be other people who do know more about this and who have got access, or they have access to means, and then I could land in trouble because of it. That's what worries me.
Yeah, I think there's services out there like LawBite or Rocket Law that actually you can download terms and conditions on their platform. So you pay a subscription. There's often a free trial with them as well, and you can download documents. Okay. Obviously, you want to make them more specific to your own business. And probably shouldn't say this on there, but sometimes you can go and look at potential competitors, look at their terms and conditions, and then take them to a solicitor and then make them more pertinent to your own business. Yeah. Whereas if you're going with a blank sheet of paper to a solicitor, obviously that's going to cost you a lot of money. So there are ways around that. And I think reflecting so legal is obviously a big one. Sometimes branding, startups can often spend thousands and thousands on branding in the first instance,
or thousands and thousands of hours on Canva thinking they're designing a brand but actually missing the point.
100%,
I might know
100%.
Someone who's done that. Yeah.
Or looking at the latest CRM or email marketing platform.
Yes.
What I'd say is you can go down so many rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And I think with the technology that's available today, with no-code tools and stuff like that, I think there's so many options out there, and you become a bit overwhelmed. And what I would say is just make a decision on one of them, run with it. And what I would say to people is, when you look back in 12 months' time, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of the website or your branding, you haven't done it right. It will change over time. And I think you should definitely be embarrassed by it. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It can develop over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just the prospect when you're shelling out that first few thousand and you haven't actually got loads of the business already, and you're just thinking, this is going to have to last me. I'm going to need this to be lasting me for a long time. But yeah, you're right. And actually lots of our previous guests have said, or not lots, but I'm thinking recently about some of our previous guests who have said exactly that. You know, they look back and they're a bit cringe, and then they're like, but actually, no, that just shows how we started and where we came from and where we are now. That is our business story. That's all good. We got out there and did it. I know who said that to me. The founder of True Start Coffee. I'll just give them a little mention. Helena Hills said, the co-founder of True Start, said exactly that about their first website and about their first brand as well. Okay, so that's how we might answer this. We'll tell you how you can get involved in answering this question in just a moment. One of the things that Piers also said, and this is so interesting because of some of the conversations I'm having with friends who've got their businesses. Your first business may not be where you make the money. It might be where you do the learning, and then actually you come up with a different business and there are more shortcuts there. And that might be where actually you create something that fulfills its potential better. So not hanging on to that initial idea that you had for dear life. I mean, how on earth you know when you've given it enough? I suppose, do you just know? Is it just a feeling?
I think it comes with time that you might know that it's not going to be the one for you. And like you say, you can package all of that experience and everything that you've learnt along the way to shortcut the route to success for your next business. And it's not a failure, it's a journey, isn't it? So I think that nothing is final. The world of entrepreneurship is so good because you can reinvest your skills and knowledge and take on another idea, and the mistakes that you made the first time round you're not going to make again, that's for sure. So I think it's a hard one, isn't it, knowing when to quit. I think that, you know, sometimes people quit too early and success is just around the corner.
Exactly, yeah.
So it is a really, really hard one, but I would consult with people that are very close to you, speak to your customers, and don't make that decision quickly. I think, build in a couple of weeks to actually really come to a considered decision.
On that, actually, something that I meant to pick up earlier, which might have surprised listeners to this podcast, and that is that Piers hasn't got a person that he names as like his mentor. So you said there, Ollie, about, you know, consulting, asking people whose opinion you value, you know, and he doesn't have that mentor, which may well be a surprise to people. I think often there's an expectation that there may be someone in the background.
Yeah, and I mean, hats off to Piers, because I think that if you speak to most very successful entrepreneurs, their mention exactly who's helped them out in those early stages and who they consult with and who they confide in, and often they place a very heavy weighting on their success in respect of that relationship they've had with their mentor. And I found that quite surprising as well. But you know, I think, well, it's never too late, and if Piers is looking for a mentor, there might be some people listening to the podcast.
And also you don't necessarily need to have one. You might not have one at all stages of your business anyway, but doing what he does, you know, going back to the investors, looking at the data, looking at the numbers, checking in with his gut feeling as to what he actually wants to do, you know, is all part of informing what happens next. Ollie, we should mention social, actually. So I know we've just had a little mull over Piers' question to you listening, but let's go to our community lead, Samantha, then, and find out just some of the things that you've been saying in response to our previous episodes where our featured entrepreneur posed you a different question. So Sam, just give us a little respin. Who was the entrepreneur? What was their business? And what did they want to know?
Last episode, we spoke to the fantastic co-founders of El Rayo, Tom and Jack. So they shared their story of how they are lifelong friends who discovered that there's a lot more to tequila than just 3 a.m. shooters, sucking a lemon and licking salt. After sampling their first tequila and tonic, which started them on this incredible entrepreneurial journey, quitting day jobs and going on this Mexican adventure to develop their new brand of tequila, El Rayo. It's an amazing story of just having an idea, running with it, making mistakes and learning on the go, making us all ask ourselves, what are we waiting for? So it was a fascinating story and so many things to learn from their journey. But of course, just like every guest, Tom and Jack had a question for our listeners. They wanted to know how you drink your tequila. 47% of people who voted said that they don't drink tequila, which didn't come as a massive surprise, as it's not a very commonly thought of drink for an average evening out. 24% said that they drink it as a shot, the traditional way we all think of having tequila. But actually 18% of us said that we mix it into a cocktail, and 11% even sip it neat. So there are some of us out there starting to see tequila as a bit more of a drink than just a shot or something to avoid, which I'm sure Jack and Tom will be thrilled to hear. And hopefully that gives them a lot to think about and to see how we're starting to move towards thinking of tequila in different ways, but that a lot of us still haven't experienced the true potential of tequila yet. So I'm sure there's a lot more for Tom and Jack to do to share that fantastic message and all the potential that tequila has out there. So hopefully a lot of us will be learning the beauty of tequila down the line and starting to maybe see opportunities to enjoy it as part of other drinks. So thank you very much if you voted for one of those options on Tom and Jack's question. I'm sure they'll be really grateful to have heard from you. And if you didn't, you can always go and vote or let us know in comments on any of our social media channels after this as well.
Good to see you, Ollie. Thank you so much for listening.